one of my favorite verses in the entire Bible first. I've literally got this as my background on my phone.
We need to stop sitting and waiting. We need to start doing and see God move in our lives. Welcome to the Bible in 1 Year podcast, brought to you by two Brits in the Bible. Today's day 70, and we're going to be covering Joshua 1, 2, 3, and 4.
In Joshua 1, Joshua leads Israel and God speaks to him about being strong and courageous. In Joshua 2, Joshua sends 2 spies to Jericho. Rahab protects the spies so they return safely to Israel. In Joshua 3, Israel moves from Shittim to Jordan. Israel miraculously crosses the Jordan River as the water is stopped. And in Joshua 4, Israel sets up 12 stones as a memorial of crossing the Jordan.
Well, good job saying the place Shittim without giggling this time.
I did giggle when we were doing the notes. I don't know what it is. It's just, it's actually funnier than the cuss words. Just such as, it's like a cute version of it.
It is. And there's a sign you've been in America. You call it a cuss word, not a swear word.
I do. Cussing. I'm trying not to cuss rather than, and not to swear. I don't know why. I prefer cuss word to swear word. Actually.
It works.
Anyway.
Cool. All right. Well, we're starting Joshua, as you probably are aware from the start of this day. Wanted to just jump in with a little bit of the chronology of Joshua here. Effectively, what it's just trying to point out is he was living in the sort of 1400 BC down towards around about 1200 BC, which is actually only around about 150 years before King Saul and then David. I sort of feel like this is where I feel sort of like getting into Israel, Moses, the Exodus, all that kind of stuff is like super Old Testament. But then when you get into things like King Saul, King David, moving forward, that's when it really starts to accelerate towards the end of the Old Testament. But obviously, there needs to be that gap. And it's funny how sometimes you just don't really piece that together when you're just reading it sort of not haphazardly, but obviously, as we've said, this is the first time we've read it from cover to cover. And so it's interesting to see that. And I know we'll touch later today on Rahab, but obviously one of her big contributions in life is actually being part of the genealogy of Jesus. So I guess that kind of makes sense in that little window as well. But yeah, written by Joshua, it's assumed. And yeah, here we go.
It's pretty cool. I like the fact you did that preamble. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Our views are slightly different on it, but you're a more seasoned Christian. So I still feel like that's, 1200 years before Jesus even arrives. But I suppose in God's timing, that's like nothing, right? And it's just interesting your perception of it.
Yeah. And there was 400 years of silence before like Jesus was born and stuff. So you still,
so you're right. There's about 800 years left before the big silence.
Yeah.
And then, which to God is not a big silence. It's perhaps a yawn.
I was going to say he had a little nap, although I don't think he naps. But
anyway, let's dive into a bit of Joshua then. So one of my favorite verses in the entire Bible first, please. So Joshua 1:9. I've literally got this as my background on my phone.
Right.
Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Just amen to that. I feel like, especially as a newer Christian, relatively still sort of around 2-year mark or so, sometimes I do get concerned with the flesh and concerned with earthly things and whatever. Mm-hmm. And this just puts it all into perspective of just, it's like that thing you said the other day about whether you go to the mountain, you go to God about the size of the mountain, or you go to the mountain about the size of your God, right?
Yeah.
And I knew I'd remember that. And this is the same sort of feeling for me.
Yeah.
God's got my back. I need to give it all over to him, pray to him. Certainly, I'm not saying it's prosperity gospel or anything. It's not that God just gives me everything I want because I ask. It's that he'll support me and he'll be with me through everything.
Yeah.
So
I really like that it's kind of echoed then, almost like a confirmation, literally at the very end of Joshua 1, because then obviously where you're just talking about there 1:9, it's God saying, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, the Lord your God will be with you. But then later on, it's actually the Israelites are talking to Joshua and saying, just as we obeyed Moses, so we'll obey you, only be strong and courageous. And so they're saying, we will follow you, but we need you to be strong and courageous. But they're saying we're absolute wrong-uns. We will not do well here. We need you to be strong and courageous, because that's what Moses did for us, and he saved our bacon. There's just literally, God is saying, do not be discouraged or afraid. They're saying, be strong and courageous. It's opposite ends of the terminology.
And what? And was that was 1:18, right?
Yes, the final verse.
Okay, cool. I was going to talk about that as well, but yeah, that's exactly awesome. I love that. And again, it's because it's an oral, verbal sort of tradition, right? I again, just the repetition of it. So then hopping into Joshua 2, we might actually be able to stay in order today.
Do it.
Maybe. Please swear to, so this is Rahab talking. Please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I've shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign, Joshua 2:12. So just, Jesus speaks a lot about how we have to give everything over to him. We have to put him above even our own family. And we've spoken about that in previous podcasts, right? And Rahab is, she could have been indoctrinated into this evil, sinful culture all around her, but she chooses God over all of that out of love for him and also to save her family. And I just think that's so inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially from her background as well, like as a prostitute. And it's just another example of God intentionally picking out the down and outs, the rotten, the wrong uns, the everything, and using them for his glory. And it's just, he can use anyone, right? Just another part of that. The thing that I liked out of Joshua 2 as well was when they actually were having that negotiation with Rahab, because we were talking previously about vows and making your vows and sticking to them. And in this, what I like about it, in 2:14, he says basically, our lives for your lives. They assured her. They made the vow with her. Later on, they added a condition, like, if you tie this scarlet ribbon on your door frame, your window frame, then we'll know who it is. So there is a vow made, but there is a condition placed on that vow. It's not just an absolute flippant comment. There is a condition. And then it's further on in actually Joshua 6, which we'll come to tomorrow, where it's talking about how they actually then kept that vow. And just so the continuation of seeing it in completion was just, I loved it.
Oh, that's awesome. I want to talk later as well about just how God honors vows that the Israelites enact with the Gideonites, even though it's not what he wanted, right? But that's for in a few days' time. So I love also that other people are melting in fear over the Israelites coming, and yet they don't know what to do. They don't sort of think to give it over to the God that's blessed the Israelites or anything. It's only Rahab that's smart enough to do that, or whatever you want to call it. A bit of maths as well. So in Joshua 3 now, keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits between you and the ark. Do not go near it. This is the instruction as they're going around the walls of Jericho in a minute, right? Quick calculation. That's 3,000 feet. That's a kilometer of distance between the ark and them. Just the awesome power of the ark.
Yeah.
Right?
And again, like you just chatted to me about briefly a second ago, just the power, the magnitude, the awe of the presence of God. Absolutely insane. Just so cool. Absolutely. Yeah. I hadn't done the maths on that, so thank you.
Did I say math?
You may have done. Mum and Dad called me out saying math the other day, so it's slipping me. Our standards are slipping.
Eventually it's going to be two Yanks in the Bible.
A Yank, a Canuck, and a Bud.
Yeah. Howdy. What's this oot in the boot?
It's good, eh?
Good, eh? I got a couple more. The biggest one I think we'll both touch on, Joshua 3:17. The priests carrying the ark, they stop in the middle of the Jordan, and yet they're standing on dry ground. So it kind of, it's a parting of the Red Sea type moment. The whole of Israel goes through the Jordan on completely dry ground. Obviously, it reminds us of the Exodus clearly, but again, just how awesome is that?
Yeah.
Just so cool.
Yeah. And I love the subtle differences with each instance of water parting, because previously it was Moses and the staff and it just parted. On this one, the priests actually, their feet had to touch the water's edge in order for the water to part. And basically it's just another example of the whole touching the tail thing, or you have to take the first step, right? You have to touch the water's edge in order for the miracle to happen. And so we have to take that first step in order to then see God move. He will often reveal it to us one step at a time. We need to stop sitting and waiting. We need to start doing and see God move in our lives. So have you got a quick one to finish on?
Just quickly, would love to know if the stones that they commemorate in Joshua 4 actually are out there somewhere. That'd be kind of cool.
Should be somewhere, even if they're grains of sand by now. Anyway, love it. Love you all. Thank you very much. Feel free to engage with us Insta at 2 Brits and a Bible.
And please consider liking and subscribing to help spread the word of God.